And yes, we are back here on Holy Family Radio, our 2023 edition of the Spring Spirit Drive. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining us, watching us on video today. And it's been a really great start to our fundraising drive this year. I want to encourage you to please consider giving us your best gift to keep Holy Family Radio going and growing. You can do that by calling 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. You can also text the word GIVE to 419-969-3255. You text that to that number, you'll get a link back with you'll get a text back with a link that'll take you to our donation page. You can make a one-time recurring donation. Either way, we are grateful for every dollar that we receive from you. We're 100% listener supported and have been so appreciative of all of that over these years. So it's time now for our next guest here on the Spring Spirit Drive. We're pleased right now to be joined on the phone by none other than Al Kresta, host of Kresta in the Afternoon. He's the CEO of Ave Maria Radio, and we're very much grateful to have him to be able to talk to us a little bit about Catholic radio. Welcome, Al.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. And Kim, I think you're there too, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. You have many responsibilities, and in addition to that, we're aware that your Ave Maria network there is engaged in its pledge drive right now. So
yeah, we are.
Why? Maybe you could tell our listeners why, with all your responsibilities and the extra time this week with your station's pledge drive, why you would take time out of that to talk with Northwest Ohio Catholic radio listeners.
Well, I'll tell you, I think Catholic radio is really a relatively new phenomenon within American Catholicism. It goes back maybe 25 years, and we've been champions of it at Ave Maria Radio from the very beginning. We had our 25th anniversary 2 years ago, and I just feel enthusiastic about the growth of Catholic radio, and I think, especially at this time in American Catholic history and in American history, we've seen our nation begin revising some very basic concepts. Marriage has been redefined. The idea of freedom has been redefined. And that's changing the moral and spiritual landscape against which we operate. Catholic radio represents a very different voice, a very different vision. We're rooted, of course, in the fact that God has spoken, that he's given us an understanding of reality in the scriptures, in the teaching of the church, and also he's given us a way of acting that out in our liturgies. So we are like underground radio. I mean, back in the 1960s, the student movement often relied upon FM stations that were on college campuses, and they had at that time it was called underground radio. They also played albums, which AM radio stations weren't playing. They had their little 45 songs, but the underground radio stations played whole albums, and they passed along political information and what's who's been arrested where, and when are we mobilizing again against the war? Whatever. This was all done through not mainstream media at that time. It was done through what was called underground media, underground radio in particular. And I think Catholic radio right now is like that. Most Catholic radio stations are doing more than radio. They also have a presence on the web. Some are very savvy with social media. Some are producing videos. We have a video studio now, so that we're actually producing videos on a regular basis. But Catholic radio is there speaking a message, reminding people of a world that they may have forgotten. And that world comes down to a few basic things. God created us. Human beings marred that creation. Jesus has come to renew that creation and regenerate the human race through baptism and faith, and that he's coming again to finish the work that he began during the incarnation. That is an incredibly different view of the world than what is carried in mainstream conversation, which believes that doesn't really accept the idea that God created. They believe that maybe nature created, nature kicked up various life forms, including the human life form, that at the end of this whole thing, we've only got the grave to look forward to. And the idea that morality is not absolute, it's relative to situations. So the Catholic way of life, the Catholic view of life, is in stark contrast to what is the mainstream understanding. To the degree that people think about stuff at all, they generally think that most people. Let's put it this way: most people will say that they believe in God, but they don't apply that anywhere. They actually live pretty much like practical atheists. And our job is to really live in the power of the Holy Spirit, the kind of joyful life that points beyond this world to the age to come. And Catholic Radio is doing that. We're doing remedial catechesis. Catholics in America were really under-catechized. They did not know all that the Church was teaching. Catholic Radio has been changing that. So we do the work of remedial catechesis. We do the work of encouraging one another. We create kind of a network of various outlets around the country that are sharing the apostolic message. So I am involved with this because I don't know anything more important that I can lend my hand to than supporting Catholic Radio. And that's why I'm delighted to be with you on your membership drive, your fundraising drive that you're having this week. So I thank you for the invitation.
Well, it's great that you could just, take a little bit of time to kind of help us to understand again, the importance of Catholic Radio. We obviously believe it's important, and we talk about how the work that we do is not to work for God, but allow God to work through us out to the culture today. And you talk about being around for 25 years. We are about half that. We just celebrated 12 years last year. We're in our first brand new studio, and so we're poised now to go, kind of to the next level, so to speak. But through those 12 years, things have really, really changed from when I got involved 11 years ago. I think of what my impetus was for Catholic Radio, not only catechesis, but I also wanted, because I felt that people needed to know that so they could stay in the church. But now it's gone more beyond that. I'm kind of wondering, from your perspective, has there been a tipping point? Is there one point in time in the last so many years that caused our culture to just suddenly escalate down into what we're experiencing today?
Yeah, it's a very good question. The sexual revolution really has been like a bomb that has gone off, and beginning in late 1960s, sexual minorities, by which we mean homosexuals, at that time even people who practiced man-boy love, and there were trans people back then as well. They decided to become politically active. This is after the Stonewall incident in New York. And so they began working to redefine how America looked at sexual expression and how America looked at marriage. The divorce revolution happens in the early 1970s. So you have a beginning of the breakdown of the family. And when we get up into the 2000s, these movements are really very strong. The homosexual rights community really incredibly well funded, and also very well connected, so that most people probably may have known of friends or relatives who were same-sex attracted. They didn't give it much thought. Catholics knew, of course, that sexual expression was limited to marriage. But in 2013, in June of 2013, there was a Supreme Court case, USA v. Windsor, that overturned the Defense of Marriage Act. So the early attempt to get same-sex marriage was stopped by a piece of legislation called the Defense of Marriage Act. And then USA v. Windsor overturned that. And that really set the tone for what followed. A year after that, Laverne Cox was on magazine, and Time magazine was saying that the transgender movement is the next great civil rights movement. In June of 2015, we had the final decision on same-sex so-called marriage in the 2015 period. We had Bruce Jenner appearing as Caitlyn did, cover of Vanity Fair magazine. Again, that same year, in December of that year, your first story hour began in San Francisco, and then began traveling around the world, around the nation. Excuse me. So what you have is a very well-crafted, well-funded, how Americans and really Westerners in general, how they view sexual expression. This is because human beings from the very beginning differentiated male and female. They were to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. This is part of our mandate by creation. Sometimes we may have seemed a little naive about sex, but the point is, it deals directly with the most important aspects of our life. It deals with family. It deals with marriage. And when you've got a well-funded, highly talented group of individuals and network that create networks to redefine how Americans view these things, you've got a challenge to the Catholic faith. And so I would say since 2020, and also 2012, 2013, when we began to have the development of social media, which most sociologists believe is responsible for the increase in teen suicide. So I'd say in the last 10 years in particular, things have gotten much worse. And it's really important for us as we face these things to not react. We've got to respond. Can't react in anger, can't react in fury, can't react in belittling people, but we have to respond in grace and manifesting the fruit of the Spirit and live out. Catholics have to live out their faith, because the only way we win this argument is by living the faith. We can't argue it. We're going to have to live it. And so Catholic radio is there to encourage people, to edify people, to educate people, to help people engage the culture around them. This is a vital time for Catholic radio. And again, it goes beyond radio, because like I said, most Catholic radio are also online, and many of them doing video now too. So, but I see it about the last 10 years in particular, and I think it's a direct result of activist groups, politically active groups, who are champions of the sexual revolution, who are redefining marriage, and now we see them trying to redefine even gender.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good summary of so many of the factors that have impacted our culture here over the last, as you said, 10 years or so. You actually wrote about some of the dangers to the faith. I think your book, Dangers to the Faith, Recognizing Catholicism's 21st Century Opponents, back in, I think it was 2013. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So in that intervening 10 years, Have you seen, there were 15 items, I think, in your list. Have you seen any of them just really take off, like, wow, we hit the nail on the head with that one, or any of them sort of drop off, or would you kind of stick to that same list today?
Well, I would. I made a mistake. I decided, because so many other people were already writing on the life issue and also writing on homosexuality, I decided not to take those topics into the book. I thought a lot of people are already doing that. Let me pick up on some other topics that they may have overlooked. The one important chapter in that book, really, actually there's a few chapters, but the ones that I think are most significant for us today have to do with, when I talk about opponent number 12 and opponent number 13. We've now have a very attractive mythology that's our culture has come to adopt. And for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call it evolutionism. I'm not talking about biological evolution. I'm talking about a whole philosophy of life that says that life is the product of random, accidental, natural events, and that we are now at a moment in history where the evolutionary process has become conscious of itself, and we are having to choose the next phase of evolution. This is cosmic evolution, this is biological evolution, but it's all evolution under the hand of human beings. There's now a movement called the transhumanist movement, which I wrote about in the book. I was the only person really writing on it, at least in Catholic circles at that time. I think that is tied in with artificial intelligence and the whole AI thing going on right now, and the idea that we're reaching a moment of what they call the great singularity, where there'll be a merging of natural and artificial intelligence. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but again, well-funded, really smart people are behind this. And in the chapters that I call Evolutionism, the New Cosmic Religion, and then Myth of Humanity 3.0, Human Enhancement Through Technology, those are two of the chapters in the book that I think are right on. I think the other chapters dealing with Christian origins are very important. Those are still things we're going to be fighting on. So I think it's a good book. I'm really pleased to have done it. I would have done it a little differently. I would like to also do a similar book in which I don't look at our opponents, externally. I think some of the biggest problems we have are within our own church, and I think there are, think of the German bishops at this time who are discrediting the faith. And so it's very difficult to present the Catholic faith in a believable and plausible way when you've got cardinals and archbishops who are directly trying to change church teaching. The world looks at that and says, hey, guys, get your act together, I'm not sure what you stand for. So if I did another book right now, I would do about our internal enemies, our internal opponents.
Yeah, well said, because that is really quite true in many ways, because I know that my wife, numbers of years ago, she was a youth minister, and she was asking me, what is up with Pope Francis, because he's making my job harder because of lacking clarity in certain statements and all that, and that has not gotten any better, and it's expanded, if anything, and so it does make our job tougher.
Yeah, one of the hallmarks of our faith is unity,
right.
and when we have disunity, it not only creates confusion internally and externally, but it starts to undermine the very one of the pillars of the faith itself.
Right.
So
absolutely, I was drawn to the Catholic faith first of all because of its teaching on unity. I became convinced that it was Jesus' will that all his disciples would be not just one in spirit, but one in sacramental communion, one institutionally. And once you come to that conclusion, you really don't have too many places to go. Mm-hmm. The Catholic Church is there. Some people might argue Eastern Orthodoxy, but the Catholic Church is the only church that really does champion Jesus' original intention, which was that there would be visible unity among all of his disciples. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, challenges abound. That is for sure. And so I think Catholic radio, I believe, is going to be at the forefront of at least not necessarily addressing the challenges, but at least outlining them and maybe giving us a prescription for moving forward. So when you think about Catholic radio, you think of Ave Maria Radio. What do you think is your prescription for what the next few years holds?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us at Ave Maria Radio, we're bringing on a digital marketing director in June. He'll be working with us full time to repurpose our programming. A lot of people don't realize that Ave Maria Radio actually is two different things. Ave Maria Radio owns and operates 5 stations in the state of Michigan. So we're located in Ann Arbor, and our signals up in Saginaw, Midland, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Detroit. So we own and operate stations, but our primary work has been as a production company. We produce about 50 hours a week of original Catholic radio programming. And EWTN picks up Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, and then More to Life with Greg and Lisa Popchak. The Doctor is in, Ray Garendi. Then they pick up Crest in the afternoon. And pick up other programs, too, that we do. Father John Ricardo is sometimes there on EWTN. So we've been primarily a production company. We are now making sure that we're not neglecting our local stations. So we've hired community outreach directors who are making sure that we're really out there with all the local events, and we're showing up in various churches. We're sponsoring films. We just did a wonderful night with a film called The Journey, and it was a production of Andrea Bocelli, the great tenor, and it was beautiful. It was like a kind of a pilgrimage on film in Italy along the Italian landscape there. Just gorgeous. We're trying to do more events like that. But I mentioned earlier bringing on a digital marketing director, and what he's going to be doing is looking at the productions that we have now, Teresa's show, my show, Greg and Lisa's show, Ray's show, a lot of the short form programs we do. We do a number of 15-minute daily features. The Food for the Journey with Sister Ann Shields and Fire on the Earth with Peter Herbeck, programs like that. And he'll be grabbing material from each of those programs, putting them in really nugget form, 60-second spots, 3-minute spots, and we'll be working social media with those little hooks, trying to get people more familiar with the programming that we produce, and also serving our local listeners in Southeast Michigan better.
That's wonderful. You're listening to Holy Family Radio's Spring Spirit Drive. The number to call is 888-287-0655, or text the word GIVE to 419-969-3255. Again, the phone number is 888-287-0655. We're talking with Al Kresta of Kresta in the Afternoon, President and CEO of Ave Maria Radio. So many people view you as, I guess I would say, the dean of Catholic radio. You just do such a great job, and I think a lot of burgeoning hosts and people entering the space look up to you. I'm kind of curious who you look up to.
You know, that's a good question, because when I began in talk radio, it was the summer of 1987, and that was before Rush Limbaugh was on the scene nationally. He was in Sacramento. But in the next year, Rush came on the scene, and he became kind of the dominant talk radio star. And it was amazing to see so many people try to imitate him. And it was not very good. I worked with a Christian pastor in Portland, Oregon, at that time. Now I was an evangelical Protestant. I wasn't Catholic, but Rush was so influential that this Christian pastor in Portland, Oregon, began imitating him and actually using, language to demean public figures in Portland. And I said to him, look, Pastor, you're representing the gospel here, and instead of talking to Representative Blumenauer with respect, you're calling him blue manure. That's not what Christians ought to do.
Right. That's not the Christian witness. No.
So there was a lot of imitation of Rush at that time, and that continued because he was a true giant as a broadcaster. But I never felt I needed to go that direction. My calling has always been to present a Christian understanding of reality. There was a moment back when I was at Michigan State University, just right near my graduation, where I had a moment of great spiritual and moral clarity that I was going to spend my life just propagating the faith one way or the other. And for 10 years, I ran Christian bookstores. That was the way I was able to propagate the faith. And I've always done one-on-one personal evangelism, so I continue to do that today. But I can't say that I've looked up to other broadcast figures because there wasn't anybody doing what I thought I should be doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I did have people that I admired. I loved C.S. Lewis in his work as an academic at both Oxford and Cambridge. He was a great professor, but he was also a great writer for apologetics, fantasy, children's stories. So C.S. Lewis was always somebody I looked up to. There was a fellow by the name of Francis Schaeffer, who was a Presbyterian evangelist and apologist, who was very influential back in my pre-Catholic days. So I would look to him for orientation and guidance on theological and apologetic topics. They were huge. Benedict XVI has been probably the most important Catholic figure for me. And I continue to read his work. I think he's been one of the best witnesses that we've had, and I always thought it was so funny to hear people talk about him as the Rottweiler. He's so that is so uncharacteristic of him. Mm-hmm. He's very very much a professorial sort, very generous of spirit. But I like Benedict XVI is very important to me. So most the influences that I've had on me were not so much broadcast influences as they were theological or apologetic or evangelistic influences. So those are three that have been very important to me. John Paul II, I thought one of the most admirable figures of the 20th century. I keep his. I have 2 volumes of his. One is all of his encyclicals. And then there's a whole bunch of other documents that he composed during his pontificate, and I keep those right with me at my desk here at Ave Maria Radio because he's, again, very rich, very deep, and they nourish my soul. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. I need my soul to be nourished. The liturgy nourishes it. These authors nourish it. And of course, as we all know, nothing nourishes us better than prayer. So those are the big influences.
Right, absolutely. I tell you what, we're coming up to the end of the time. Actually, we've gone on a bit longer than I expected. So I thank you so much for being so gracious with us today, for sure. So, is there any parting words you'd like to perhaps share with us and with our audience today?
Sure. Yeah, I would like to, again, urge all who are listening to us that the work that you're doing there, Deacon Jeff, Kim, the work that you're doing there is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of heaven and hell. It's a matter of guilt and forgiveness. What you are offering on the radio dial and in other areas is a way out of the confusion of this current culture. And it's important for us to continue to take our cues from the magisterial teaching of the Catholic Church and never shy away from that, and make sure that we are teaching all that the Catholic faith professes. So I would urge listeners to recognize the importance of Catholic radio. And Catholic radio doesn't exist without our listeners, who are actually partners with us in this work of evangelization. We couldn't do the job without our listeners and partners. Mm-hmm. So really take advantage of the opportunity here at 888-287-0655. That's the number to call, and make your pledge. So thanks for the opportunity too, Jeff, Kim. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be with you. Thanks.
We thank you.
Yes, we definitely thank you and appreciate those words as we wrap up our time with you. And once again, we're talking to Al Kresta, CEO of Ave Maria Radio. Good luck and best of luck for your Spirit Drive or your pledge drive as well. We all depend on it, and so things are encouraging, and hopefully everything comes through. So God bless you.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
All righty. So that was Al Kresta, folks. 888-287-0655. 888-287-0655. That's the number to call, please, to make your donation, your pledge. I mean, you can call and you can say, I'll send you a check, or we can send you an invoice, whatever it might be. That's just give us a call at 888-287-0655.
That time with Al was fantastic. I said ahead of time, Deacon Jeff, I thought the time would go way too fast, that we'd have 3 times as many questions we'd like to ask him and hear his thoughts on. But
right.
We definitely want to be respectful of his time and graciousness and taking time to talk with us during such a busy time for him, as well as all his normal responsibilities. But very well thought out, well read, insightful man.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. There was one thing I was going to mention if I had the time. I was going to name drop and stuff. Yeah. But one of the things he was talking about when he talked about transhumanism, and when I asked him that question about, things going off the rails kind of so quickly, I read a good book that I'd highly recommend folks to try it out and read. It's a very small print right there. But the book is The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. It's written by Carl Trueman. He's a Protestant sort of theologian sort of type, but he's more academic. The book is about cultural amnesia, expressive individualism, and the road to sexual revolution. This is the best book that I have read and come across so far that lays the groundwork for how we got to where we are today. His premise that he starts with is how did we get to the point where you could stop someone walking on the street and they would agree with you and talk about how a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man type of thing. How did we get to this sort of point that somebody's neighbor would not flinch at that anymore? Mm-hmm. And this is not an easy read by any stretch of the imagination, but it lays the foundation from the French philosophers in the Enlightenment, like Rousseau and Nietzsche and those folks.
All the way back that far.
All the way back that far to other sorts of ways, up to Freud and Jung and all those others who talk about the psychological man. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, this is the age of the psychological man, which means we live inside our brains. Who we think we are is who we are. Mm-hmm. Ignore what's on the outside, but it's on the inside. So
now, you might have mentioned it in that list there. I might have missed it, but does he mention the Reformation
in this book?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Because I've often thought, and this would have been a great question to throw to Al really and get his thoughts on, but I've often wondered whether that was one of the pivotal steps along the way, the questioning of who decides.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really kind of at the heart, I think, of the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation.
Right.
That, I don't have to take what the church says. I'm going to decide for myself what's true, what's accurate, what authority is. I don't know. It's just, I'm sure minds far greater than mine have analyzed that issue and decided it either was a contributing factor and expounded upon it or rejected it. But
Right.
I would be curious as to some of those thinkers' thoughts on that.
Yeah. It is certainly a domino in sense of it broke unity.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of kept falling ever since. And you could go back to 1930 with the Lambeth Conference, where contraception was approved by the Protestants over in England and stuff.
First church to
Yes.
ever
Yeah.
recognize contraception as legitimate.
Right. It's not a grave evil.
Yeah.
And then you just accelerate to no-fault divorce and sexual revolution and so on and so forth. And here's where we find ourselves. And so when you look at that, you look at the idea that we have our phones, which means we can feed ourselves information and stuff that is attractive to us,
And algorithms that encourage that.
and algorithms that encourage it, and therefore this is where our mind is, right?
Yeah.
And we can get all sorts of messages, and we're attracted, and we're given stuff that feeds that attraction. And
It starts to sound like truth.
it's
You hear a lie
Right.
often enough,
Mhm.
and it starts to sound like truth.
Yeah.
And good and truth then become cast as evil,
Mhm.
and the evil that you're hearing over and over again begins
Mm-hmm.
is cast in society as the good and the truth and the right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complete flip-flop.
Yeah, complete flip-flop. And so
But that's why we're here.
that's where we're here. Yeah.
That's why Catholic Radio is here, is to help you understand, think through, talk through,
Cut through.
cut through. There you go, the best one yet. These sorts of issues to help you really evaluate them through
Yeah.
a Catholic perspective.
Yep.
And it literally, I don't just say that. I mean, not that I would just say. I remember issues coming up, and I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but I remember, one of these newer issues, whatever they were in the last 10 years or so. Because, as you know, Deacon Jeff, I'm a convert to the faith. 12 years ago now, let's call it that, that or thereabout. And so I started listening to Catholic radio at that point, and I remember hearing this new issue, whatever it was, and literally thinking, I wonder how I'm supposed to think through this issue as a Catholic. Like, how do I evaluate what is good and what is a misconstruence of good? And that's speaking of Al Cresta, like, that's literally one of the things that his show does very, very often.
Yeah.
Is, okay, one of his promos one year was about, I'm not going to remember the exact words, but, interpreting the news of today through a Catholic lens or something to that effect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the many things that Catholic radio does.
Yes.
Not only does it provide that remedial catechesis, intermediate, catechesis to help you just understand the faith better, but it really helps you wade your way, cut your way through issues that are facing all of us in society today and how we want to view them. So, but we need partners like you out there, listeners.
That's right,
We need
we
you
do.
to partner with us in this mission to proclaim the truth with clarity and charity throughout Northwest Ohio and beyond. So give us a call, won't you, at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. You can also text the word GIVE to 419-969-3255.
That's right. Our underwriter of the hour, and we're 45 minutes into the hour, to just let you know how things quickly get away from us here as we try to serve our guests as best we can and provide you with the best listening experience or watching experience, whatever the case may be. Columbus Grove Family Dentistry is our underwriter of this hour. Not that they are underwriting this particular hour, but this is the hour we're choosing to acknowledge them as being one of our longtime business underwriter.
They've been underwriting at least as long as I've been listening.
Yes. Yep. Right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So we thank them for their continued support and really they've really gone above and beyond. They donated before Dr. Earl and those folks. They donated before we got started, and so we thank them for their generous donation. So
Yes, and thank you, listeners, for your best donation, your best gift. If your best gift is $5, we are deeply grateful. Don't think for 1 minute, oh, that doesn't make any difference.
right.
20 people giving $5, obviously you can do the math.
Yes.
Gives us 100, and whether it's recurring, whether it's one time, it all adds up to help support the mission of Holy Family Radio. So give us a call, 888-287-0655.
That's right. 888-287-0655. Remember, you can also text and get a link to donate to us. I'm pretty sure a couple of folks have taken advantage of that as I continue to get the notifications for donations made online. And just to give folks an idea, so far today, our total brings us to the best day one we've ever had. So
That deserves a
deserves
round
a
of
bell ring,
applause.
maybe.
It's a chorus of hallelujah.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
I told Deacon Jeff earlier that years ago he used to have all these great sound effects for us. The chorus of hallelujah, the applause, a phone ringing. You had a whole host of things, and I'm missing those. So I don't know whether he can find one for us. But for this to be the best first day that we've ever had in our Spirit Drive is truly cause for celebration, especially because last year was such a rough year.
It was.
If you're a
Oh my
faithful
gosh.
listener, you will know that we lost our local signal Friday morning, first thing Friday morning, which is usually our most prolific donor day. And boy, it showed up in the final numbers without a doubt. So we're hoping that we have no similar mishaps this year, but more importantly, we're hoping that you listeners can jump out in faith and either renew your donation from prior years or perhaps be a first-time donor. Give us a call at 888-287-0655.
Okay, when it comes to those sound effects, I'm going to have to recreate those.
Oh, boy.
Because they're set up as hotkeys in my software program here. But the move to the new studio in August, we got a new installation and I got a new server that we moved over to, and so I have not gone through and reconfigure those hotkeys per se. So I'm going to work on that sometime
Excellent.
before tomorrow so that we can play those, because that's fun.
They are fun.
It's a fun little thing, and you get a chance to hear that.
Well, we know you're very busy with all the things you have to do, and he's the Wizard of Oz there behind the curtain, or in this case, now you can watch him
That's right.
live. Doing all the clicking and adjusting and moving this
All the looking down,
lever
looking
up and
over,
looking over, and
all this other stuff.
there-
So
all the things that he's keeping track of. All I have to do is talk, and I only do a marginally decent job at that. But Deacon Jeff does a lot for your Catholic radio here on Holy Family Radio. Give us a call, won't you, at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. If you prefer to do it sort of via text, you can send the word GIVE to 419-969-3255, and it'll send you right back a text with a link in it that will take you to a page on which you can donate. And of course, as always, you can donate through holyfamilyradio.fm, as in FM radio. That is our website, and that's all set up to take your donations. And of course, our app is as well. The Holy Family Radio app, if you don't already have it, can be found on the Google Play Store as well as the Apple App Store. So check out those venues of ways to give here to your Holy Family Radio, Catholic radio throughout Northwest Ohio. 13 counties, I think we cover currently, and looking to expand as well.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that? You haven't talked about that in a little bit.
A little
so maybe
bit,
we have
yeah.
some listeners that don't know about that.
That's right. If you're a new listener, you probably don't know all the different things that we have going on or had going on for a while. We have been approved and accepted by the FCC to build 2 new radio stations in the Diocese of Toledo. One will be in Fostoria, covering Seneca County, Seneca County and Hancock County and a couple other counties around that area. There used to be a low power FM station there, 103.3 I think it was, and or 104.1 I think, and they went off the air in 2020. They didn't renew their license, and so that's been silent ever since. And so we thought we could come back into that area and bring Catholic radio. And so I know the deacons that are there, and they're very much excited. And they were here at our grand opening, and here in the studio. So I'm excited to offer that to those people in that area. And then the second one is Van Wert. So Van Wert's been one of those areas we don't quite reach into Van Wert. If you're listening in the car, it really starts to fade out as you get there, both on 94.9 and 88.9. And so by putting a station there, we'll cover Paulding and Van Wert and into Indiana and areas south of there. So it's an important expansion. Fostoria is going to happen first, hopefully by the end of this year, followed by Van Wert after that. And we're going to need your help and support for that, folks. We expect it to take about $80,000 to $100,000 altogether to build these stations. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's on top of what we already need and require to keep this station going. Yeah. So we're going to be asking for some help when it comes to that. And we are actually, yes.
Right
this is where we build that bank account up to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, and that's critical. We probably should mention that more often, but the board and Deacon Jeff can't move on these opportunities when they come up if there aren't sufficient funds in the account to do so.
Right.
And having those funds has made the difference in being able to acquire the licenses to all of the expansions that you've done. Really, have you had to move on all of them very quickly? I'm trying to recall now.
Oh yes,
several of them
absolutely.
have had to be quick.
Yeah, I mean Findlay happened through a search. For available licenses or whatever, and I found that, and we approached someone and bought it, and then we put that in place. But the Ada acquisition was one of those things where I just got a phone call one day. I remember exactly where I was, and so there might be somebody who's interested in selling, and it's a big station, and would you be interested? I said, yes, I would be very interested in that. And then I immediately started thinking, what station could possibly be available that's non-commercial and, and all this other stuff that I started going through my mind, because being in the radio industry, I know a little bit about what's around and commercially as well. And so that was one that did not come up on my radar.
Yeah.
But when I found out...
But you had to be able to act quickly.
Yes, exactly. That's where it came. It's like, okay, because we were able to do this without a broker. So if you're familiar, when you buy a house with a real estate broker, they take percentages. It would have cost us more if we worked through a broker, but we just went directly with them, introduced to them through our engineer. And we're happy to make it happen when we did, and we were prepared for it.
And all the stations that the signals, the different stations you've been able to acquire are important and great and wonderful. But the particularly nice thing about the Lima Ada one is the strength of its signal.
Yes.
It really carries far. Mm-hmm. If you're driving around really locally here in the Ottawa, Glandorf, Leipzig area, and your 88.9 signal gets a little staticky, try switching over to 94.9. You will find it reaches here very strong.
Yeah.
And it reaches south strong. It just has provided a much wider network.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, this is probably an appropriate time to talk about the Findlay station, the Findlay translator. It's really not a station per se, but it's a translator. It extends our signal. With the acquisition of 94.9 in Ada, that covers the Findlay area as well as that translator does. And Ada was such a good deal in the fact that we bought the tower, so there's no tower rent. And the footprint there's really not much of any ongoing cost. So it was a fantastic deal. But Findlay's not so great, as in we pay a healthy rental fee for that tower, and it turns out we don't really need it, in terms of the coverage. So we have entered into an agreement to sell the Findlay station, the 88.7 W204CU, to another radio group. non-Catholic one, of course, but so folks need to know that that's going to be changing sometime in the next couple of months. It's been filed with the FCC about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it still has to go through approval process and a few other things, but it's going to position us very well to be able to do Fostoria very quickly with that cash that's going to come from that.
And Finley listeners,
you're not going to
don't
lose
heart.
anything.
Yeah, you're not going to lose. You probably got a better signal on, or at least is close.
I think
94.9.
94.9.
Yeah.
And when 90.9 and Fostoria comes along, that's going to also fill in that gap to the northeast of Finley.
Yeah.
So never fear, it's going to put us in a better financial position overall, lower our expenses by quite a bit, and really, I think we'll come out better as a result. So you need to be aware of that. I'll put that on Facebook and social media as well. Lots of things to talk about, announce, and reveal, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
including, I'm going to take the next few minutes here. I got to look at my schedule. Yeah, to announce or maybe I should wait to just before they show up to do.
I think that's a good idea because
Okay.
I think our next guest is
our next guest is in studio.
So yeah,
let's
we probably
take a
wanna-
break.
yeah.
Top of the hour. Okay.
All right. So
You can introduce it, and I'll set her up.
all right, we're going to take a break here during the Holy Family Radio Spring Spirit Drive. You're listening to us on WJTA 88.9, W204CU 88.7, and WOHO 94.9. OHA. That's supposed to be an Ohio State thing I was doing there.
Oh, really?
I think.
Oh.
OHIO, OHA,
Oh.
WOHA. I have it
One
written
holy
down
and
right,
apostolic.
but I obviously cannot speak. So we're going to go to break. Break is a great time to give us a call, 888
Yep.
287